Well guys, The Batman has had a full week in theaters. Hopefully you guys were able to see it and hopefully you enjoyed it. I've seen the film twice now already, so now it's time for me to go back and talk about and rank all the other live-action solo Batman movies. Before I get started, I just want to say that if you're new to the channel, then welcome. If you enjoy this type of content, then feel free to like and share this video and subscribe to the channel. That really helps me out. With that being said, we all know how ranking videos work. This video is just my personal opinion on these Batman movies. Instead of getting all mad on how I would place these movies, then let me know in the comments section at the end of the video how you would rank these films. Also, one more thing to keep in mind, I'm not going to be including the Adam West Batman movie, simply because I had a tough time figuring out where to put that in my ranking, and in the end I just got to the point where I was like, you know what, I don't think it's fully fair to put this movie in with the other live-action Batman movies. Just my opinion only. I know other rankings do include that movie, so that's fine if you do or not. I like the movie a lot, if that helps, but I had a hard time putting it in my ranking because I didn't know where to put it, so I just decided not to include it. So with all that being said, let's get started with the ranking. Starting out the bottom of my list is, no surprise to anyone, Batman and Robin. I mean, this movie is labeled by so many people as the worst comic book movie ever made. I don't think it's the worst comic book movie ever made. To me, the worst ever made is Superman 4. But that still doesn't hold the fact that this is a terrible Batman movie. The main issue with this movie is that it just went too cartoony, too campy. A lot of people view this movie as a continuation of the Adam West Batman show. And yeah, watching the movie on that level, there's definitely some entertainment value to it. But then that soon gets crushed when you realize that there's actors from the previous serious Batman movies in this movie, and then you realize, oh yeah, it's a continuation of those movies. Batman and Batman Returns went in this very serious, very dark direction, especially Batman Returns. And then when we get to the Joel Schumacher films, it just turns too kid-friendly, too goofy and cartoony, like a goofy comic book, so to speak. So you could say on that level they did all right, but again, you realize the previous two movies were very dark, grounded, and serious for the most part. And so when you watch Batman and Robin on that level, it just doesn't hold up. George Clooney doesn't work as Batman. He's an alright Bruce Wayne. Like, I can buy him as a Bruce Wayne, but as Batman, he just falls completely flat. His line delivery isn't anything unique or special for Batman. I feel like Batman should have a different type of personality compared to how Bruce Wayne is. And George Clooney just plays the exact same character when he's in the Batman suit or when he's Bruce Wayne, the same tone, and it's just, I don't believe him as Batman. Chris O'Donnell is just a whiny brat as Robin. Alicia Silverstone as Batgirl was a weird addition. Granted, this movie was made to sell toys, and the filmmakers have fully acknowledged that. So Batgirl's inclusion in this movie doesn't really work on a narrative level. It could have, but it just feels out of place. But when you realize that this movie was made to sell toys, then it's like, okay, yeah, I can see why they put her in the movie. Arnold Schwarzenegger is hilarious as Mr. Freeze. I love his ice puns, "Ice to see you," and "cool party," and my all-time favorite, "What killed the dinosaurs? The Ice Age!" Like, it's hilarious. But then again, you realize that this is going off from the serious Batman films, and then it just crushes you. Basically, all the performances and all the set pieces and the overall direction was just go goofier, campier, more kid-friendly, even though Joel Schumacher has admitted that he wanted to make serious Batman movies, but Warner Brothers wanted him to make more family-friendly films because Batman Returns didn't do so well at the box office. Either way, that was a big disaster and a terrible decision to make, and Batman and Robin is a hilariously bad movie that is entertaining, but definitely the worst Batman movie. Now, after saying all that, you could probably figure out what my number 8 is going to be, and that's Batman Forever. Now, a lot of people have a nostalgic connection to Batman Forever. I I don't remember watching Batman Forever when I was a kid, so I don't have that nostalgic connection to it. I remember watching the first two Batman movies as a kid, but not so much this one. So with me not having that nostalgic connection, this movie's kind of boring, honestly. Like I said earlier, Batman Returns didn't do well at the box office because people thought it went too dark and serious, and so they got rid of Tim Burton. Michael Keaton didn't come back as Batman, so they hired Joel Schumacher and told him just make it more family friendly, which he did, and the movie made money because of that. But similar to Batman and Robin, when you look at that direction compared to how the first two films went, and this is a continuation off the first two films, going that kid-friendly route just felt like a huge step back. They got Val Kilmer to replace Michael Keaton, and again, he's an okay Bruce Wayne, but he's a very bland Batman. George Clooney was more goofy as Batman, but Val Kilmer tried to play it very straight, and it just came off as kind of bland. Val Kilmer's a great actor, and so is George Clooney, but their Batman's just wasn't the right direction, continuing off of Michael Keaton. And like I said earlier, this movie is just pretty boring to me. Even though there's a lot of good visuals, there's a lot of bright colors and some nice stuff to look at, the drama in this movie just doesn't fit. There's times where it tries to be a little more serious with the drama, with this love story between Nicole Kidman's character and Bruce Wayne and Batman, and it was just dull. I didn't think it was handled all that well. It also doesn't help that there's a lot of corny line deliveries in this film. More so in Batman and Robin, but there is quite a bit more in here. So that balance of trying to make some sort of drama with these corny elements doesn't really fit all that well. The puzzle pieces don't really work. Chris O'Donnell is introduced in this movie as Robin, and he was okay here. Again, in Batman and Robin, he was very whiny, but he was all right in this one. True, he seems a little too old in this movie to be Robin, but he did an okay job. Tommy Lee Jones and Jim Carrey as Two-Face and the Riddler are the big things everybody talks about. They're so over the top, so goofy. I wish Two-Face would have been played by Billy D. Williams like he was in the first Batman movie, but whatever, we got Tommy Lee Jones. Tommy Lee Jones is a great actor, and he went so over the top in this movie that it is very entertaining. Same thing with Jim Carrey as the Riddler. However, with the new Riddler in the new Batman movie, Jim Carrey looks really pathetic as this Riddler. But again, a lot of people have that nostalgic connection, so I can understand and respect that. Nicole Kidman in this movie is just there to have a love triangle between Bruce Wayne and Batman. Her only characteristic is that she's a reporter, and Nicole Kidman's a good actress, so I feel like her talent was wasted in this movie, and she has a lot of overly sexualized dialogue that's meant to please the young boys in the audience. I mean, it definitely pleased me, but I don't really see the need to have this character in... Okay, so Nicole Kidman gets a pass, I guess. I'll be right back. Next at number 7, we have Batman vs. Superman: Dawn of Justice. Now, this is the point in the video where it goes from movies I don't really like or care for to movies that I really do like and enjoy. Batman v Superman, I have an interesting relationship with. When I first saw the movie, I was like, it's all right. It was more of a mixed bag for me. There were plot elements that I didn't know what to think of, and there were just elements that I downright hated. I saw it once in theaters, and I was like, okay, I've seen it. I'll get it on Blu-ray and watch it maybe later on, but I wasn't in a hurry to check out the film again. And then I got the film on Blu-ray when it came out, and I watched the 3-hour director's cut, the Ultimate Edition, and I enjoyed it a little bit more than I did in theaters. And then I ended up watching it with my parents, and they really enjoyed it, and I liked it about the same then too. And then I went a few years without watching it. I ended up buying the movie on 4K when I got a 4K player and TV, and I watched it again, and I was like, this movie's doing something for me. Because when I watched it on 4K that first time, I said to myself, I'm actually pretty much enjoying this. Then in 2020, I bought the new remastered 4K edition with the IMAX ratio and the enhanced color that Zack Snyder did for this. And after watching it on this copy, this is the most I've ever enjoyed Batman vs. Superman. Does it still have problems? Yeah, and I'll mention them a little bit later on, but I could safely say now, after seeing the movie a handful of times since seeing it in theaters for the first time, that I do like Batman v Superman overall. I think it's a gorgeous looking movie. Zack Snyder really does a good job with his visuals for his films. I love Ben Affleck as Batman. I thought all the Batman elements in the film were phenomenal. Best Batman I've ever seen, in my opinion. Henry Cavill, I liked a lot more as Superman. I really liked him in Man of Steel, but seeing his character go through the stuff that he did in this film, I did really enjoy it, and I became a bigger fan of Henry Cavill as Superman. I liked how the Ultimate Edition also gave more context to why Superman doesn't like Batman, because in the theatrical cut, we perfectly understood why Batman doesn't like Superman, but there wasn't much of a build-up to why Superman didn't like Batman. Well, in the Ultimate Edition, we see Clark Kent doing some investigating around Gotham, and he picks up information about the Batman, and he's feeling like Batman's doing more harm than good. And it's like, okay, we got motivation now. And I really struggle to understand why something like that was cut out of this movie. That's kind of an important thing to introduce in your film. And while we're still on the topic of Batman and Superman, the fight in the movie, phenomenal. I have no issues whatsoever with their fight in the movie. It's gorgeous to look at. It takes place on a rainy night. Batman starts kicking Superman's ass. Superman kicks Batman's ass. It's a good balance, too. It's not just Batman winning or Superman winning. It gives both of them time to shine in the fight, which I thought was very important. And I know a lot of people have made fun of the Martha scene, and why did you say that name? And I don't know. I thought it was fine. It could have been worse. I really don't have a problem with that. I don't know. I really don't have a defense for that. It's just one of those things that just never really bothered me. Now, I do really like this movie after seeing it a bunch of times, but I do have some issues with the movie that has still stuck with me. I still don't like Jesse Eisenberg as Lex Luthor. Jesse Eisenberg is a great actor, but he was either given poor direction from Zack Snyder or bad writing from Chris Terrio. I don't know which one was which, but his performance really didn't work for me here. And even though the movie is better balanced, in my opinion, in the 3-hour Ultimate Edition, there are still times where the story does get just a little bit convoluted and kind of rocky, going from this political thriller all the way to this big action set piece in the third act. Again, it's better paced in the Ultimate Edition, but there's still moments that do stand out pacing-wise. And everybody knows about the ending of the film, so I'm just gonna go ahead and say it. Having Doomsday show up felt too big of a stretch. I get the motivation, I get why they put him here, but it just felt like too much of a stretch. It was they were trying to do something too big and epic when just having Batman versus Superman I thought would have been fine enough. And my last thing is kind of a positive and a negative. Amy Adams as Lois Lane. I'm a big fan of Amy Adams. I think she's terrific in a lot of other movies. Arrival is the biggest one that stands out for me. She was great in that movie. And she gives a great performance here as Lois Lane. However, this movie and Man of Steel, more so this movie, kind of struggles on what to do with her character. She's mainly just there to worry about Superman and to kind of get herself in trouble so Superman can save her, especially at the end of the movie when she has to get the kryptonite spear. So, yeah, the movie doesn't really have a place for her in this movie, and okay, yeah, Amy Adams gets a pass from me also. Damn it. Next up, we have Batman from 1989. This movie is my definition of comic book fun. Every time I watch this movie, every time I describe this movie to people, it's just fun. This was the first Batman movie to take itself seriously, go in a more darker, serious direction after the really silly, goofy, yet still very entertaining Adam West show and movie. So in that regard, this movie had something to prove. You know, comic book movies at that point were seen as kid stuff. So even though there was success with the first two Superman movies being a little bit more adult-like, can the same thing be proved with Batman? And this movie was a big hell yes it can. And while the movie is kind of tame by today's standards of dark and gritty, at the time, this was a very dark and gritty comic book movie. Again, comic book movies back then were just seen as kid stuff, so seeing a more adult Batman was pretty entertaining to see. And Michael Keaton, I just love Michael Keaton as Bruce Wayne and Batman. He's so entertaining. He's got a lot of great moments as Bruce Wayne, a lot of awesome badass moments as Batman. I love the guy as Bruce Wayne and Batman. But probably the biggest scene stealer in this film is Jack Nicholson as the Joker. Now, yes, other Joker performances have gone more darker, more grittier, more adult-like. But for this iteration of Batman, Jack Nicholson kills it as the Joker. He's so entertaining. Has that good balance of over the top while still being threatening. And the score by Danny Elfman for these original Batman movies is just awesome. It's just epic. It plays through my mind quite a bit when I'm thinking of Batman. So that's praiseworthy. I mean, it sticks with you even decades after the film has come out. This movie just set up a great direction to take these movies for a more adult-like Batman series. But of course, we know that original series didn't really continue that direction, and they really should have. But Batman 1989 is still very entertaining to watch all these years later. But my favorite of the original 4 Batman films is Batman Returns. This movie took the more adult aspect of the first film a huge notch higher, and I thought it was all the better for it. Instead of the Joker in this one, we get the Penguin, played by Danny DeVito, and I love Danny DeVito as the Penguin. He is so, again, a good balance of over the top, yet still trying to keep that more adult tone, despite the fact that his backstory was that his parents abandoned him in a sewer and he was raised by penguins. Yeah, that's goofy, but they found a good balance there. It's hard to describe it besides that. It's a good balance in my opinion. And we get introduced to Michelle Pfeiffer as Catwoman, who's phenomenal as Catwoman. I'm disappointed we never got that solo movie with her, because the Halle Berry Catwoman movie was supposed to be Michelle Pfeiffer, a continuation off of Batman Returns, but we all know that didn't happen, and that's a shame. Michelle Pfeiffer did a very good job as Catwoman. She was very criticized when the movie came out as being too over-sexualized, but that's kind of Catwoman's character, and if you're going for a more adult tone, that ends up working out. At least in my opinion it does, but whatever. The deed is done, I guess. And Michael Keaton just kills it again as Bruce Wayne and Batman. Again, by today's standards, these first 2 Batman movies might not seem more adult and grittier, but again, going back to what I said earlier, comic book movies weren't known as that. So these movies were a huge step up for comic book films. And Batman Returns took that just a step further than the original Batman film did. Again, this movie didn't make money when it came out. It was heavily criticized for being too adult and too dark for kids. And McDonald's toys were pulled or something like that from McDonald's because of the reputation this movie got. It was something like that. But looking back on it now, it's really funny to think about, considering how dark and gritty comic book movies are more accepted nowadays. It's funny to think about Batman Returns as being controversial when it came out. I don't know, it's just silly for me. Batman Returns is my favorite of the original Batman movies. Every time I watch it, I just love it. It just gets better and better for me every time I watch it. But now we're on to the Christopher Nolan trilogy, and we're starting out with number 4, Batman Begins. A phenomenal origin story for a comic book character. This was the first time we actually saw Batman's origins in live action form. It was hinted at and shown in brief flashbacks in the original Batman movie, and it was shown in more extent in Batman Mask of the Phantasm, but this was the first live action one, and my God was it brilliant. Christian Bale does a great job as Bruce Wayne and Batman. He nails the Bruce Wayne element, both as a playboy, millionaire, and the Bruce Wayne element when he's alone with Alfred, and he nails the Batman. Now, I gotta admit, I'm not a huge fan of Christian Bale's voice as Batman. It's the one thing in this trilogy, of this dark and gritty trilogy, that takes me out of it every now and then. Besides that, he's great as Batman. And I liked how we got to see the League of Shadows in this film, and I liked how Liam Neeson played Ra's al Ghul. That was brilliant casting, and he owns that role, in my opinion. And I liked how this movie went in a more darker and serious and grittier aspect, you know, what these movies are known for, but it's not pretentious about it. This movie could have easily have come off as artsy and pretentious and, oh, you know, you're trying to be more than just what you really are, which is a comic book movie. But no, this movie actually took it in a very good, simple, and serious direction to where it doesn't come off pretentious, in my opinion. Christopher Nolan is a phenomenal director. I know nowadays it's kind of not frowned upon, but easy to say, oh, you're just a Christopher Nolan fanboy because of the Batman movies. Well, to be honest, he's a damn good director, and these movies really do prove that. This movie nailed the origin story, it nailed the casting, it nailed the villain, it nailed everything. Batman Begins is probably the best comic book origin movie we've ever gotten, and I do stand by that. Now this one's just a little bit more controversial, but my number 3 is The Dark Knight Rises. Now, I know a lot of people don't like this movie. I've even heard a lot of people say this is the worst Batman movie, which I don't agree with that at all. Are there plot holes in this movie? Yes. Are the plot holes very noticeable? When you kind of really pay attention to it. Honestly, on first viewing, actually my first few viewings, I didn't really pay attention or notice it all that much. But yes, the plot holes in this movie are very obvious. How did Bruce Wayne get back to Gotham so quickly after being thrown into that pit? Oh, while Bruce Wayne's in that pit, there's someone in his cell with him that automatically knows how to cure his back problem after Bane demolished his back in that fight. Oh, that's very convenient. Oh, and Bane just so happened to put a TV in Bruce Wayne's cell so he can see the destruction of Gotham. Oh, how lame is that? Honestly, those things are just so little, so minute, that I really say to myself whenever people point those out, is it really worth mentioning those? Not only is it a phenomenal end to this trilogy, but it's a phenomenal film, period. With my comments on Batman Begins not coming off as pretentious, even though it could have been, the same thing could have been for this movie. With the success The Dark Knight had, this movie could have easily have been very artsy and pretentious, especially with its cinematography, and it doesn't do that at all. This movie's not above of having humor, despite the fact that it's a very bleak and very depressing movie when you think about it. I mean, Bruce Wayne is very broken up about the events that happened in The Dark Knight, that he hasn't been the Batman for 8 years. And there's a new villain in Gotham, Bane, played brilliantly by Tom Hardy, who's involved with the League of Shadows in some way. All of this could have been pretentious. At least I think it could have been. But Christopher Nolan, being a phenomenal director and setting up this trilogy so damn well, it doesn't come off like that as well. And we get introduced to Catwoman in this movie, played by Anne Hathaway, and this is my favorite Catwoman. I don't know if it's just Anne Hathaway's performance, the fact that I'll always have a soft spot in my heart for Anne Hathaway, but I don't know, when I saw her as Catwoman, I fell in love with her portrayal. I thought it was very good. I thought she kicked a lot of ass. She was very snarky, very sarcastic, yet not cocky at the same time. It was a good direction to take her character, and Anne Hathaway does a great job. To me, The Dark Knight Rises is just a great emotional thrill ride that, in my opinion, perfectly closes this trilogy. And that's why I put it above Batman Begins. Yes, there's plot holes. I've acknowledged that. But the overall movie is just so damn good and so well made that those plot holes don't even matter to me. I love The Dark Knight Rises. I don't get why people dislike it. If you do dislike it, that's perfectly fine. I just don't view it that way. Now, going into my number 2 and number 1 is gonna cause some discussion between Batman fans and especially people that I might know personally, but I've had a lot of time to think about this ranking, and I'm pretty set on how I rank these last two. So, at number 2, my runner-up, The Dark Knight. Now, for the longest time, The Dark Knight was my favorite Batman movie, and some people even seeing the new Batman movie, you could probably guess what my number one's gonna be, still declare The Dark Knight as the best Batman movie. Now, if you are someone that's like that, I can't argue with that whatsoever. The Dark Knight just does everything you would want for a sequel to Batman Begins, and just for a comic book movie in general, going in this darker, more grounded in reality route. It does everything phenomenally well. The stakes in this movie are just launched up to a level 10. The intensity in this movie, the way it's filmed and directed by Christopher Nolan and acted by all the actors, you really buy that intensity. And let's talk about Heath Ledger as the Joker. Now look, a lot has been said about this guy. Pretty much everything you could say about Heath Ledger's Joker has been said. All I'll say is, yeah, I definitely agree with all those statements. Everyone had doubts about this guy when he was cast as the Joker, but were proven wrong instantly as soon as they watched the movie. This guy is so damn good and still holds up, even though we've gotten Joaquin Phoenix as the Joker, and possible hints at the Joker returning in these new Batman movies. He still holds up incredibly well. You look at Heath Ledger's performance in something like The Patriot, and then you look at him in The Dark Knight, and it's like, how did he do that? He's a phenomenal actor. He was a phenomenal actor, and it's amazing that he pulled off that performance, and he proved everyone wrong for that. The Dark Knight is one of those movies where everything that is to be said about the movie has been said already. It's like me trying to review The Lord of the Rings nowadays. It's like everything's been said about those movies, so there's no real point in it. I do agree with every single positive comment that is said with this movie. It's a phenomenal comic book movie. It paved the way for darker and more grittier, more adult-like comic book movies. And we've gotten a lot of great ones because of it. Everything in The Dark Knight did everything it was supposed to do so perfectly well. And everything holds up. You know, with this movie being 12, 13 years old now, wow. It's a long time. Nothing about it feels dated. This movie is going to be a timeless classic later on down the line, just like it is now. So yeah, there really isn't much more I can add to the comments that have already been said about this movie. It's a damn near perfect movie, and it was my number one Batman movie until The Batman. Now, yes, a lot of people are going to disagree with that. Again, a lot of people seem to still prefer The Dark Knight, and that's perfectly fine. Again, if you still prefer The Dark Knight, I can't really argue with that. I would say, yeah, okay, I agree with you on that. You have valid points for that movie to still be your number one. But I'm going to do my best to describe why I put The Batman as number one. This movie just did everything for me. I held this movie on very high standards because, number one, I am a huge Batman fan. And number two, every single promotional material was impressing me more and more. So I kind of had no choice but to put this movie on higher standards. And it somehow surpassed those standards. It surpassed it way beyond I expected it to be. Robert Pattinson killed it as Batman. Everyone killed it in their roles. Zoe Kravitz as Catwoman, Paul Dano as the Riddler, Colin Farrell as the Penguin. Wow. I've seen the movie twice now, and his performance just got so much better than it was the first time, and I loved it the first time. To me, The Batman just did everything The Dark Knight did, plus it added in elements from the Batman animated series. And that's how I feel. I don't know if a lot of people are mentioning that, but to me, I get a lot of animated series vibes from this movie. A more adult animated series vibes. Which, like I said in my original review, those two are some of the best Batman material out there. And when you combine those with a great director and great actors, it just explodes. It just blows my mind that this movie was as good as it was. Michael Giacchino's score is great. The cinematography is beautiful. It's probably the best looking Batman movie we've gotten. If you want to know more thoughts about the movie, then go check out my spoiler-free review, and I'm not going to be doing any spoilers here, but the reason I put The Batman over The Dark Knight, in my opinion, is that balance between, like I said, adding in elements from The Dark Knight as well as the animated series, and the fact that this movie proved that this movie isn't The Dark Knight 4. I know a lot of people were worried about that. You know, this movie is just going to be The Dark Knight 4 done by a different director, and it really didn't feel like that to me. There's not a lot of humor in this movie, and there's more humor in the Dark Knight trilogy than it was in this movie, even though there are some kind of chuckly funny moments here. There's not really much more I can say, but I love The Batman. I've seen it twice now in theaters. I want to see it a third time. Maybe The Dark Knight will take that #1 spot later on in the future. We'll have to see about that, but for right now, it is by far my favorite Batman movie, and I've been thinking about it nonstop since I've seen it. So guys, that's my ranking for all the live-action solo Batman movies. I feel like this video is going to be a little bit longer than I hoped it would be, but I didn't really talk about the previous Batman movies before on this channel, so I wanted to get as much of my thoughts out there as I could. Guys, just like always, let me know your thoughts and opinions on these films down in the comment section. And just like always, guys, thank you again for watching. I have one more Batman video I'm going to plan, and that's going to be a ranking of the Batman actors, so look forward to that coming real soon. Again, thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, then don't forget to like and share it. Subscribe right here if you haven't already, and until next time, guys, take care.